All the 13 political parties regularly recognized by the Ministry of Interior and Public Security filed their list of candidates for the upcoming legislative elections. The warring sides of Ethiopia announced Wednesday an agreement to silence their guns after 2 years of devastating conflict. Tanzania's population increased by more than 37% in a decade to reach 61.7 million, President Hassan said on Monday. Hello and good afternoon. Welcome to the 1 p.m. English News edition. I'm Metohuey ADOGLO, and I'll guide you in this edition by myself. All right, I'll tell you, the cabinet meeting of Wednesday took place under the chairmanship of Mr. Patrice Talon, President of the Republic, head of state, head of government. Among other decisions taken, creation of the support committee for the development of the film industry and the transmission to the National Assembly for the examination and vote of the bill stating the legal regime of the lease of residential use of the Republic of Benin and approval of 7 companies to the investment code for various investment projects. Now here's an account by the spokesperson of the government.
Création du comité d'appui au développement de l'industrie cinématographique.
Creation of the support committee for the development of the film industry. The government intends to work for the promotion of the cinema, the objective being to encourage its contribution to economic growth. The sector will thus complement the numerous actions undertaken in tourism, culture and arts with a view to promoting the image of our country at the international level. Transmission to the National Assembly for examination and vote of the bill fixing the legal regime of the lease for residential use in the Republic of Benin, the reform of leasing in the Waimu area, and especially the adoption by the states of parties of the law relating to it, call for a new review of the law number 2021-02 of February the 1st, 2021, amending and supplementing that of 2nd July 2018 relating to the lease for residential use, with a view to removing the provisions that could be sources of conflict. The following decrees were also adopted. Attribution, organization and functioning of the Ministry of Decentralization and Local Governance and the Ministry of Social Affairs and Microfinance. Appointment of members representing the state on the board of directors of the Société Commune d'Audiovisuel. The approval of 7 companies under the investment code for various investment projects. The companies concerned have applied for the benefit of the incentive schemes of the code in order to engage substantial investments intended for the development of their business. By doing so, they contribute to the reinforcement of the economic fabric, satisfy the offer of products in high demand on the national market, and generate several hundred jobs. Contract for the construction of 26 multi-village drinking water supply systems in the departments of Borgu and Alibori. The 26 sites concerned represent a batch of the 4 constituted within the framework of the realization of the 95 multi-village drinking water supply system in several departments. The National Agency for Rural Drinking Water Supply has conducted the tender procedures that allowed the awarding of the contracts for the different lots except for this one. In order to avoid any delay in the deadlines set for the achievement of the objectives of universal access to drinking water in our country, it requested the authorization of the cabinet meeting to contract with a company that has already proven itself previously. The council therefore agreed that the departments of Borgu and Alibori should also be taken into account, along with all the others, for the realization of multi-village drinking water supply systems in their entirety. The Ministry of Water and Mines in collaboration with the Ministry of Economy and Finance, will take the necessary steps to ensure that the work starts and is carried out properly in accordance with the specifications.
Démarrage des travaux et leur bonne conduite conformément au cahier des charges.
The Workers' Union of SBU organizes 3 days of sitting in all agencies of the Electricity Company of Benin. The union wants to show its discontent with the management of reforms initiated within the company. The workers denounced the lack of action by the authorities and urged them to react to restore order and justice in this vital sector for the country.
Ce que nous constatons est qu'il y a beaucoup de déviances de gestion et les gens ont pensé qu'avec l'appui de l'État, ils peuvent faire ce qu'ils veulent.
We've noticed a lot of things are going wrong, and regarding the management of the company, people believe just because they have the support of the government, they are allowed to do whatever they please. If we do not act about it, we'll be seen as accomplices of everything that has been going on here. Though we are not permitted to go on strike, we have to do something to show our discontent towards bad governance. Even the government have noticed all this, reason why they fired the former general manager for underperformance. All the unions are together in this movement to raise the alarm on how bad the situation is.
Toutes les organisations sont ensemble pour démontrer que ça ne va pas, appeler l'opinion publique et les gouvernants à voir avec nous ce qu'on appelle une gestion à la SPE. Il y a beaucoup de sacrifices, et surtout financiers.
Many investments were made in this sector, but we've noticed the managers are mistaking reforms for the right to do anything they want. There are so many unnecessary extra expenses around here. It is simply unbelievable. What is going on here is really a sensitive case, and we need to draw the attention of the population.
Ce que nous constatons dans la gestion, c'est délicat et il faut que les gens voient avec nous. Et les résultats ne sont pas là. Oui, MHI, c'est Manitoba Hydro International. C'est au fait.
MHI, meaning Manitoba Hydro International, is a Canadian company which has been in charge of the reforms at the Electricity Company of Benin. It's been 3 years that they've been managing the company, but frankly, what is going on has nothing to do with what is supposed to happen. Regarding the fact that they are so-called specialists in this field, nobody is saying anything about their management, but we decided to do something about the situation.
Prendre nos responsabilités en main, tirer la sonnette d'alarme et que les gens viennent nous écouter. Nous ne grèvons pas inutilement, nous décidons alors de manifester notre mécontentement en portant le rouge massivement.
This is not a vain strike. We've decided to come to work, but all dressed in red, to draw the attention of the populations. We've had some talks with the authorities already, but up to now, nothing has really changed. If we really go on strike, we will cripple the whole sector, and the population will be the collateral damage. The population has done nothing to deserve this. It's not their fault. Though we've started the sitting, we keep the door for discussions open, and we believe they will listen to us so that we can stop the sitting instead of worsening it.
C'est pourquoi le mouvement a commencé. Malgré ça, nous continuons avec les discussions et je crois qu'ils vont nous écouter et essayer d'aller dans notre sens pour que nous arrêtions les mouvements et non l'aggraver.
All right, moving on from that, 8 of the 13 political candidates, parties regularly recognized by the Ministry of the Interior and the Public Security, filed their list of candidates for the upcoming legislative elections on Wednesday. On the last day of filing the nomination papers, 4 parties supporting the ruling government and 4 parties of the opposition have got their provisional receipt pending the control of the documents submitted. Getty Saturday has the report.
4 political parties of the opposition and 4 supporting the ruling government filed their list of candidates for the January 2023 legislative elections on Wednesday, November 2. Party leaders appreciate the good organization of this stage of the process.
Nous voyons qu'il y a du sérieux dans l'organisation et donc ça nous laisse
We see that there is seriousness in the organization, and therefore it allows us to predict the good continuation of the process. Some tax receipts are missing and some personal identification numbers because the files have been submitted, but it happens that some have expired. We've asked for new ones and we are still waiting to have them. We will complete them within the time limit prescribed by the law. It is with satisfaction that the work has been done, and especially that we have been given the opportunity to control well beforehand. For the Republican bloc, the legal requirements in terms of respect of gender have been largely respected, as evidenced by the figures announced in the process. However, not all militants can be candidates, says the National Executive Secretary of the party, who plays the appeasement card and calls for national unity.
Je veux d'abord souligner que
I want to emphasize first that we have gone beyond the legal obligation regarding the presence of women on our list.
La présence des femmes sur notre liste.
The People's Liberation Movement is sounding the alarm for an inclusive electoral game and for a national assembly that reflects the people and the youth.
La jeunesse,
whatever the pitfalls, whatever the difficulties that this power will put on our roads, we are going to cross them and participate effectively in this legislative, and this is the first step that we have just taken tonight. What we ask the organizers of this election, the Senate and the other institutions, is their impartiality.
C'est leur impartialité.
Like the four political formations supporting the government, the Democrats and the FCBE, the New National Force and the Popular Movement of Liberation have 72 hours for a possible completion of the file, the final step before the publication of the final list of parties that can participate in the next legislative elections of January 8, 2023.
The warring sides in Ethiopia announced Wednesday an agreement to silence their guns after 2 years of devastating conflict that have claimed thousands of lives and left millions needing aid in Africa's second most populous country.
The United Nations hails a very welcome first step, while Washington claims a major breakthrough in regards to Ethiopia's announcement of a cessation of hostilities between the government and the rebels in Tigray after over a week of negotiations led by African Union in Pretoria, South Africa. The warring sides in Ethiopia announced Wednesday an agreement to silence their guns after 2 years of devastating conflict that have claimed thousands of lives and left millions needing aid in Africa's second most populous country. The surprise deal between Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's government and the Tigrayan rebels was unveiled after little over a week of negotiations led by former Nigerian President Olusegun Obasanjo. The breakthrough was announced almost exactly 2 years to the day since the war erupted in November 2020. It was not immediately clear how the deal would be monitored to ensure it was implemented, and there was no mention by Obasanjo of international rebel calls for Eritrea's feared army to withdraw from the battlefield. Diplomatic effort to bring Abiy's government and the TPLF to the negotiating table had taken on renewed urgency after combat resumed in late August, torpedoing a 5-month truce that allowed limited amounts of aid into war-stricken Tigray.
We must be true to the letter and the spirit of this agreement. The people of Ethiopia expected more than the text of this agreement. They demand peace and harmony. They desire development. They have charted a promising and bright future. The government on its part will take various proactive measures to nurture democracy and inclusive development in the country.
So I hope our effort to silence the guns would be followed through in earnest, and our people deserve all the peace in the world, and we need to rebuild communities which have already been shattered as a result of such a bloody war that has continued for the last 2 years and it still continues.
There were the first formal dialogue between the two sides since the start of the conflict that has raised concerns about the stability of Ethiopia and the volatile Horn of African region. The delegation in Pretoria said it was now up to both sides to honor the agreement, while Abiy himself vowed a strong commitment to its implementation. The head of the government's team, Abiy's National Security Advisor, Redwan Hussein, praised the sides for their constructive engagement to allow the country to put this strategic period of conflict behind the country. Tigrayan Delegation Chief Gachua Reda said they were ready to implement and expedite this agreement, adding, "In order to address the pains of our people, we have made concessions because we have to build trust." The war has forced well over 2 million people from their homes, and according to U.S. estimates, killed as many as 500,000. Despite the peace process in Pretoria, intense fighting had continued unabated in Tigray, where government troops backed by the Eritrean army and the regional forces waged artillery bombardments and airstrikes, capturing a string of towns from the rebels. The international community had voiced increasing alarm over the combat and the toll among civilians caught in the crossfire.
Burkina Faso's new military leader on Wednesday visited Mali for his first foreign trip since taking power, holding what his Malian counterpart hailed as fruitful exchanges on peace and security in the region. Now, both leaders came to power the head of army officers angered by failures to roll back Islamist-linked Al-Qaeda and Islamic State group.
Burkina Faso's new military leader on Wednesday visited Mali for his first foreign trip since taking power, holding what his Malian counterpart hailed as fruitful exchanges on peace and security. Captain Ibrahim Traoré, who seeks power in Burkina Faso in a September 30 coup, flew to the Malian capital Bamako for what Mali's foreign minister said would be a roughly 3-hour friendship and working visit. Traoré left Mali for Burkina Faso capital Ouagadougou Wednesday evening after the conclusion of the meeting. He greeted 34-year-old Traoré in the afternoon as he disembarked from the plane at the airport capital Bamako. The two men then headed to a VIP airport lounge for private talks before continuing on to the presidency for further meetings with their respective delegations.
It is a courtesy and friendship visit to a brotherly people. The most important thing for us in the current situation is the security challenge. So with these people, we have come to discuss how to strengthen our military cooperation and be able to better conduct our operations and secure our people.
In Burkina Faso, officials had earlier said the main issue discussed would be the fight against terrorism, referring to the two countries' bloody struggle against jihadists. The two Sahel states rank among the poorest and the most volatile nations in the world. Both leaders came to power at the head of army officers, angered by failures to roll back Islamists linked to Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State group. Along with neighbor Niger, the two countries have suffered thousands of fatalities, and more than 2 million people have fled their homes. Traoré ousted Lieutenant Colonel Paul Henry Dambiba, who in January had toppled Burkina Faso's last elected president, Roch Marc Christian Kabore. On the Goita, Mali began a weave of closer ties with the Kremlin, acquiring aircraft to strengthen its beleaguered armed forces and bringing in Russian trainers, described by Western countries as Wagner mercenaries. As this relationship intensified, ties with Paris, Mali's traditional ally, deteriorated, and France became a target of vilification. Paris, this year, put out the last troops it had deployed in Mali as part of its backing anti-jihadist force in the Sahel. The latest coup in Burkina Faso had been marked by anti-French protests in which some demonstrators have waved Russian flags and demanded the departure of a contingent of 400 French special forces. On Sunday, Burkina Faso's new prime minister hinted that his country may look at stronger connections with Russia in light of the New Deal in security.
In Niger, 817 schools with a total of over 72,000 students, including 34,464 girls, have closed, mainly in the Telabara region, the so-called three border areas between Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, according to the United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF. Some 17,000 students have already been able to return to the education system, and soon more than 55,300 others would go to about 20 of those dedicated centers in several towns in the southwest hosting displaced people, according to the Nigerian government.
Hundreds of children with their blue UNICEF stamped school bags on their backs walk down small and sand dunes to study on the outskirts of Oulam, a town southwestern Niger that has been plagued by jihadist violence for 5 years. But these children are not like other students and carry with them memories of the horrors they witnessed at the hands of the jihadists. They come from 18 villages close to Mali, whose inhabitants found refuge in Oulam at the end of 2021, fleeing the killings by jihadist groups linked to Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State that led to the closure of schools. In Niger, 817 schools with a total of 72,421 students, including 34,464 girls, have closed, mainly in the Tilaberi region, the so-called three borders areas between Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, according to the United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF.
Plus de 90 écoles fermées. Donc, cette situation
I have more than 90 schools closed, so this situation has prompted the regional management to rethink of a response. This roadmap created the cluster centers in the Tillabari region, including 3 cluster centers in Walam.
3 centres de regroupement au niveau donc de Walam.
Some 17,000 students have already been able to return to the education system, and soon more than 55,300 others will go about 20 of those dedicated centers in several towns in the southwest, hosting displaced people, according to the Nigerian government. In Ulam, nearly 1,600 school children, some of whom had dropped out 3 years ago, are enrolled in 3 centers built near a site for displaced people. The euphoria of a return to school has not, however, erased the memories of the horrors that some of the children witnessed.
They have been traumatized by the event they have lived through because some of them have seen their parents killed, shot in front of them, and this has marked them. So these children cannot be left like that. They have to be taken care of to bring them to a normal life through exercises.
Nasir Malik, Hassan, Abdu, and their parents walked for miles on foot to flee at Dabab, a village in the commune of Bani Bangu, which has been targeted several times by jihadist attacks, the last of which cost lives of 11 civilians on the 22nd of October. When they arrived, many of the children showed signs of distress and trauma. Some were isolating themselves, others were very aggressive, said Muru Chabu, head of education. Some recounted in great detail how their parents were shot in front of them. He sighed.
The situation for schools is very worrying and is even becoming dramatic. There are more than 890 schools that have been closed here in Niger. As an alternative, many children have been grouped together in school centers where it is much more difficult to give them access to quality education. In Walam, nearly 1,600 children are enrolled in school.
However, minor cases of absenteeism worry the managers of Ulam centers, which have free canteens. Some children skip school to go to work in town and feed their families, says Adamu Dari. Very poor families tend to take their children to work or to start early marriages of young girls. Applause from his French Secretary of State, Harlan Dessy, Vice President of Europe of the NGO International Rescue Committee, who recently visited the site of the displaced people of Ulam. Maruchabu warns, if these children are left behind, they risk being recruited by armed groups. In 2021, Amnesty International warned of the recruitment of young boys aged 15 and 17, mainly by the Al-Qaeda-affiliated group de Soutien à l'Islam et aux Musulmans, particularly in Tohodi area near Burkina Faso, in agreement with their parents.
India's digital footprint has tripled in less than a decade. 60% of Indians now have access to internet. The digital expansion has changed the lives of millions of people across the country. We'll take a closer look at how that growth clashes with government attempts to regulate the internet.
The Singhs in Delhi are one of India's most followed social media influencer families.
So guys are finally
they are among the new influencers who have become an internet sensation overnight because of India's digital revolution. Every week, this family produces dozens of videos on YouTube and Instagram, ranging from short films to dance videos. Ramneek Singh, the head of the family, says for them, content is everything.
Earlier, without internet, without this reach, there were no opportunities for people like us who are social media influencers. We are earning a lot of money as well, you know. There's a huge economic impact on our lives. And all this again is happening. Why? Because of the internet.
India's digital footprint has tripled in less than a decade. 60% of Indians now have access to the internet. This expansion has changed the lives of millions of people across the country.
To expand its digital footprints, the Indian government launched the Digital India program in 2015. The main aim of this ambitious program is to connect more people online from the remote areas and to transform the country into digitally empowered society.
In the bustling markets of Delhi, one of the most visible changes is the transition to digital payments. From tea stall owners to big businesses, digital payments have become their new mode of transaction. Deepak Kumar has been running this tea stall for several years. In recent months, he has noticed a clear shift among customers who prefer digital payments over cash.
The majority of customers I get these days want to pay online. No one carries cash. Digital payments also make it quick and easy for us.
But this massive expansion of India's digital space comes with its own setbacks. The country has the highest number of internet shutdowns imposed by state and central governments. Last year, the internet service was cut in India 106 times, and so far this year, 93 shutdowns have taken place. There are also other impediments like disinformation and growing censorship, which critics say are rampant since the Hindu nationalist government came to power in 2014. For the Internet Freedom Foundation, an organization that defends online freedom, the situation in India is a cause of concern.
I think India's rising instances of internet shutdowns fits into a larger trend towards eroding democratic ideals. Online censorship in particular in India is a highly opaque process. If your speech or your website or your YouTube video gets taken down by the government, you are never told why this happened. As a result, you never have an opportunity to contest this.
With a powerful blend of government initiatives to improve and expand connectivity, India's digital revolution is gathering pace. However, it comes with the fear of increasing censorship and a slide towards digital authoritarianism.
More than 1 million Somalis have been displaced by the worst drought in 40 years. The situation in Somalia is becoming more critical as the days go by.
The UN's World Food Programme says Somalia's worst drought in nearly half a century has wiped out millions of livestock and made nearly 80 million people, including 1.5 million children, face hunger. The unprecedented failure of a fifth rainy season in a row has displaced more than 1 million Somalis from the countryside to the outskirts of cities like Baidawa. Many have no option but to walk, and the most vulnerable don't always survive.
Our journey took us 10 days, during which 3 of my children died of hunger. We have not received any aid for the 3 months we have been here. Our only source of income is the firewood we cut and sell. If we don't sell any, we are unable to eat and sometimes go hungry all night.
Children under the age of 5, the most vulnerable to malnutrition, receive what care is available at Baidawa Hospital.
We have experienced a severe drought, during which we have not been able to grow our crops for 4 consecutive seasons due to lack of rain. Our livestock has been wiped out, and my son is suffering from malnutrition.
Hospital admissions for children are rising quickly.
Malnourished children are at an alarmingly high rate. We were admitting about 150 to 200 children per month. Now the number of children per month has reached 300 to 400.
Somalia's southwest state government is working closely with aid agencies to lessen the impact of the drought and try to prevent famine. State Minister of Humanitarian and Disaster Management, Abdi Nasser Abdi Aroush, is coordinating relief efforts.
Our goal is to ensure that no famine occurs in this country, and we expect God to help in our efforts to ensure that it does not happen. It is important that we do all that is possible to prevent people from dying of hunger. As a government, we have been entrusted with the responsibility by our people.
But in the makeshift camps for displaced, there are few visible signs of adequate aid for drought victims. The last famine in Somalia in 2011 killed 250,000 people. If more food aid doesn't arrive soon, aid groups say another famine in Somalia could be even worse.
Mounds of plastic waste in his hometown prompted one Zimbabwean man to build a shredder that helps turn trash into useful items. He plans to move the project to the capital, Harare, where authorities have been struggling to deal with plastic waste dump on the streets.
Troubled by the plastic waste in the streets of his city, Bulawayo, Qinisani Kalindlovu quit his lucrative construction business and is now using his backyard to recycle plastic into items used by school children.
In 5 years' time, Umhlaba Recycling will probably be producing sports equipment, recycled for educational purposes. You're mentioning your kids' counters, you're mentioning your book holders, and we're looking at sitting areas for school children, particularly outdoors.
He collects plastics from his neighborhood and from schools near his home in Bulawayo.
This program is so helpful because it keeps the school clean. Yes, and also the school children, since they always throw the booklets around, so by collecting these booklets, it clears all the dirt and the pollution also by the school.
For years now, authorities in Zimbabwe have struggled to dispose of plastic. Nkanison Ndlovu, the cleansing superintendent of the city of Bulawayo, says his council is putting in place policies to encourage private companies and volunteers to go into the recycling business.
Plastic waste is one of the waste that is giving us serious problems as the city of Bulawayo, because everywhere where you go, you will meet plastic waste. In the streets of the CPD, in the residential areas, all over the place there is plastic waste. So it is indeed a serious problem in the city of Bulawayo.
The same is true for Zimbabwe's capital city of Harare, where Qinisani Kalindlovu hopes to move and establish recycling there to fight plastic waste.
Hello and welcome to the African Newspaper Reviews. We're touching on stories all across the African continent. Now, first we touch on papers coming from our local territory. Our first paper of the edition is the Matin Lib. Now, the front page of the Matin Lib talks about the fight against plastic and such a plastic in the Republic of Benin. Now, for a while, for 5 years after the law came into the country that people should be able to dispose their plastics papers to be recycled properly. And now this paper now looks at how that law has affected the disposition of plastics or the dustbin use of plastic papers around the country. Now I'm looking at the middle part of the paper. It says crimes against journalists. We have that there on page 9 of the Matin Lib. Moving on from the Matin Lib, we have the next paper of the edition as we touch on Le Nord-Sud Quotidien. The front page of the Nord-Sud Quotidien talks about the legislative election 2023. We have that just right there on the front page, and we can see the structure of Senate just right there. Now, it talks about how the Constitutional Court is satisfied with the measures taken by Senate. Also, to highlight that a lot of documents that were incomplete have been disposed of as well. Okay, looking at the right hand of the paper, we look at it as talking on economy. The belief in the economic importance of the Republic of Benin in 2020 as it rose by 6%, says Wagutugulu, the Minister of Economy in the Republic of Benin. Now moving on from that, we head to the next paper of the year to touch on the Daily Guide Ghana. The front page of the Daily Guide Ghana reveals Tofua declares NDC flag bearer bid. Also on page 2, Parliament moves to automate voting. We have that on page 6. And IMF talks could delay 2023 budget. We have that also on page 6 of the Ghanaian Times of the Daily Guide from Ghana. Moving on from that, we have the next paper of the edition as a touch on the Nation Nigeria. The front page of the Nation Nigeria reveals article firm enroll over $5.9 million visa bill payment. Now, company writes PDP candidates, no agreement signed, says ex-VP's lawyer. Now, that is from page 6 to 7. On the lower part of the paper, it says just right here, it says 52 Ijebu traditional rulers endorsed Abiodun for a second term. We have that on page 6 right there. Also, on the top hand of the paper, it says Tinubu donates 100 million to Kogi flood victims. A lot of money to donate into the floods. We just hope this money will be properly dispersed around the people that really need the money. And that, in that regard, I mean the victims. We have more about that on page 25. And obviously, as he's coming into president, as he is the flag bearer of the APC party, of course, he wants to show that he can do good for Nigerians and show this is his means, or rather his medium, to show Nigerians he is a good president. He could be a good president. Also, looking at the middle half of the paper, it says federal government blames states for rise in out-of-school children. We have that on page 5. In the last edge of the paper, it says Oyo presents 310 billionaire budget. Renewed hope for action plan. It's authentic, says APC and PCC. We have it on page 26. AKT to spend 113.6 billion naira next year. Spend it on words. You can find it on page 3 of the Nation, Nigeria. Looking at the right-hand side of the paper, it says Abuja hotel guests for security profiling over terror alarm. Now, military needs no prompting to defend Nigeria, says the Defense Headquarters Department. We have that on page 8 of the Nation, Nigeria. Now, moving on from that, we head now to the New Vision, Uganda. The front page of the New Vision Uganda reveals how to access the parish cash under the new conditions. On page 5, government issues new rules for PDM loans. New national medical stores. On page 3, ARE engineer loses bid to block the sacking. We have it on page 33, and inside the bits, we have it on page 37 to page 38. On the right-hand side of the paper, just right here, it says Ebola. First Lady issues guidelines for PLE candidates. We have that on page 4. Making millions from famine. Wow, that's on page 24 and page 25. And obituary, NRA hero Am Karimshi, dead. We have that on page 10 of the New Vision Uganda. Moving on from the New Vision Uganda, we head now to the Punch, Nigeria. The front page of the Punch, Nigeria reveals federal government plans supplementary budget over rising inflation. Depreciation, we have that on page 2, 19, and 22. Dollar closes it at 895 to the naira on Thursday. Reps stick to 403.725 exchange rate. Government eyes more taxes, fewer incentives for Nigeria in 2023. Federal government molds China Portuguese loans for railway projects. We have that on page 7. Now, on the top half of the paper, it says Emirates, more airlines may suspend Nigeria operations. We have that on page 19. Why would they be suspending Nigeria operations? You can find that on page 19. Wike revokes Atiku's campaign chairman's plot. We have that on page 26. And Tinubu amends timeline just to host first rally. We have that on page 8 of the Punch, Nigeria. Now, okay, looking at the bottom half of the paper, it says, just right there, it says, Nigerian-born woman Azupike becomes U.S. Army General. Okay, it is a proud day for Nigerians and looking at one of their own becoming a general in the United States Army. But being born Nigerian and going all the way to become a general in the United States Army is actually a great achievement. So yeah, that's one on hat for her. Congratulations to Azubuke on becoming a United States general in the United States Army. Now, Lagos Untouchable Agberos enjoy government back in drivers president say. Drivers president of Nigeria Association in Lagos is coming out to say that the Agberos of Lagos enjoy the government's backing. Why? How? You can get that on page 3. Now, United Kingdom remands 28-year-old Nigerian for stabbing mother to death. Ouch. You can find that out on page 5 of the Punch, Nigeria. Also, ASU summons neck meeting over half salary. We have that on page 24. Moving on from the Punch, Nigeria, head to the next part of the edition as we touch on the Punch Extra Sports. The front page of the Punch Extra Sports says, Maroon Mamadi excludes. We saw snow for the first time. So the lad looked up and said, Yoruba, snow lele. This is how speaking Yoruba just right there. This is just the front page of that right now. And everybody started running. All of us packed our loads and ran into our rooms. Now, this is a testimony of Maroon Mamadi exclusive. She's a falcon of Nigeria now. My Super Falcons diary. This is what she has for her diary on the Sports Special. Now, looking at the top part of the video, it talks about song. Heung-min's son is a South Korean, and he plays for Spurs. Now, Heung-min's son playing for Spurs has to go undergo an injury. You have it on page 5. Now, page 3 reveals PK announces retirement from football. Now, PK is one of the most decorated footballers on the planet. He played for Spain, he plays for Barcelona all his life. He's a one-player, one-club man. At the end of the day, he's won 2 Champions League. He's won 8 La Liga Cups. He's won 1 World Cup. He's won 1 European League, 1 European Cup. So he's achieved quite a lot, and I think he believes now is the time to rein it in and retire on a high. Now, looking at the right side of the paper, it says Arteta shuts down Barcelona links. We have it on page 4. EPL clubs pay 100 million for Kvaratskhelia. We have it on page 5. Van Broekstetten won the strike against Uruguay in 2010. Still looking at the road to Qatar, and that is 15 days to go till the World Cup will start in Qatar. It's all set. It's all ready. Players are ready. Players are just trying not to get injured, because if you get injured now, they miss that flight to Qatar. Now, moving on from that, we head now to the star from Kenya. The star from Kenya reveals Raymond Omolo is Ruto's new man, power man. We have him right there, and basically he's talking about it being a story of rags to riches. Now, from humble beginnings in Homa Bay, Interior PS, Omolo, like his boss, is a testimony all dreams are valid. So yeah, this is Ruto's new man from rags to riches. Now, looking at the bottom half of the page, Kenyan women narrow tales of horror in Saudi Arabia. We have that on page 8, 9, and 10. You can get more about that there. President Ruto twatted plans to grab port, says DP Gwacha. Why? You can get that on page 6 of the Star from Kenya. We're now head to our last paper of the edition as we touch on the Star from South Africa. The front page of the Star from South Africa reveals property mogul helped Syria remove $20 million. Now, Cyril Ramaphosa has been accused of fraud and money laundering, as a lot of money, a huge sum of money was found in his apartment, in a chair in his apartment by a maid, and he tried to cover up that astonishing discovery, and this has led to political opposition saying that he's a fraudster and he stole the money, and he's trying not to declare that money as he tried to silence the police officer and the maid who found that money. Also, battle for control in city of Johannesburg rages on. What is the battle about? What is it about? You can get that on page 3 of the Star from South Africa. Well, that's all we have for you, edition of the African Newspaper Review. And we can just take a look at our top stories as we end this edition of the 1 p.m. English News. Now, let's tell you, 8 of the 13 political parties regularly recognized by the Ministry of Interior and Public Security filed their list of candidates for the upcoming legislative elections. The warring sides in Ethiopia announced Wednesday an agreement to silence their guns after 2 years of devastating conflict. Tanzania's population increased by more than 37% in a decade to reach 61.7 billion, President Hassan said. And so we conclude the 1 p.m. English News live from our studio in Kudun City. Coming up next is the French newsroom. Now, for more information around the world, stay tuned to Golfe TV Africa, and whatever thoughts you like to share with us to our programs, you can reach our social media handles. You can also call the Golfe Commercial Service and let us know what you think. I'm Metohuey ADOGLO, and I'll see you same time tomorrow. So goodbye for now.